Hey everyone, I hope all of you are doing great. So in today's video, we're going to see backstories related to normal looking photos, last photos taken moments before disaster, and also the photos which are just disturbing looking to begin with, and have backstories that are even more disturbing. In the last video, many viewers pointed out that I mispronounced some names, especially those of the victims, and I understand how that came across as disrespectful. For this video, I was super careful not to mess up anything. I watched videos on every case mentioned to make sure I pronounced each name correctly. Some of you also mentioned how playing Aladdin and similar games while discussing serious crimes didn't sit right and felt out of place. Going forward, I'll make sure the gameplay matches the tone of the video better. With that said, I hope you can enjoy today's video and know that I'm working very hard, and I appreciate all the feedback you guys give. Anyway, let's begin the video. Phoebe Handschuck, 2010. This case happened in Melbourne, Australia. Phoebe Handschuck was born on May 9, 1986. Her dad was a psychiatrist and her mom worked as a veterinary nurse. Phoebe had two older brothers. People said she was creative, energetic, sensitive, and very social. As a teenager, Phoebe started having mental health problems. She had mood swings, depression, and social anxiety. Because of this, she was referred to a mental health worker. Her parents had trouble managing her, and she began drinking alcohol. Over time, her drinking got worse. She also started using drugs like cocaine and ecstasy. When she was 15, Phoebe ran away from home for 8 weeks. She was very attractive and often dated older men. In 2009, she met a man named Anthony Hample. He was 39 years old and worked in event management. His father was a retired judge, and his stepmother was also a judge. Phoebe and Anthony moved into a luxury apartment building called the Valencia. They had a rocky relationship and broke up and got back together several times. On December 2nd, 2010, at around 9 a.m., Anthony left their apartment for work. Phoebe was seen on security cameras around 11:43 a.m. when a fire alarm went off in the building. It turned out to be a false alarm. Phoebe went back to the apartment a few minutes later. That evening, around 6:09 p.m., Anthony came home. He saw Phoebe's bag and keys, but she wasn't there. There were 2 wine glasses on the table, broken glass on the floor, and blood on her computer and a door frame. There were also strange notes around the apartment. Between 7:06 and 7:09 p.m., a worker found Phoebe's body in the building's garbage room. Her jeans were pulled down to her knees. The police believed Phoebe had fallen down the garbage chute from the 12th floor. The fall was about 120 feet. Her body hit a compactor at the bottom. When police arrived, they didn't let paramedics check her for signs of life. They believed she was already dead. Later tests showed Phoebe had a high level of alcohol in her blood, 3 times the legal limit for driving in Australia. She also had taken sleeping pills called Stilnox, which can cause strange behavior. The coroner said Phoebe's death was an accident, not a murder. However, the investigation was poorly done. Police didn't check important evidence like computer files, security footage, or some of the blood found at the scene. They also didn't test Anthony's computer for 4 months. Phoebe had taken that medication before, without any problems, but it wasn't prescribed to her. It was actually Anthony's medication. Phoebe was strong and trained in martial arts. There were no fingerprints on the garbage chute, which might mean it had been cleaned. There was no sign of sexual assault. Some people wonder if Phoebe was trying to take her own life. A few days before her death, she told her mental health worker she didn't feel safe. The worker thought she was feeling suicidal, but didn't call for help. Phoebe said she would just take some pills to sleep through the pain. Sadly, the worker didn't follow up with her. In the end, it's likely Phoebe climbed into the chute herself, either as a tragic accident or as a way to end her pain. She was very drunk and confused. There's no strong evidence that anyone else was involved. Alyssa Bustamante's selfie, 2009. Alyssa Bustamante was born on January 28, 1994, in California. Her parents were Cesar Bustamante and Michelle. Michelle was only 15 when Alyssa was born. Alyssa's parents were cousins by marriage. When she was 2, the family moved to St. Martin's, Missouri, so Michelle could be closer to her mother, Karen Brooke. Karen and her husband, Gary, lived nearby in Jefferson City. After moving, Michelle had more children, twin boys and another daughter, but both parents had serious problems. Caesar had trouble with drugs and alcohol and was violent. He was sent to prison for 10 years for assault. Michelle also used drugs and was arrested several times. Because of this, Alyssa had a very hard childhood. She often went hungry, saw her mom use drugs, and once watched her overdose. Eventually, Child Protective Services took Alyssa and her siblings away. They were sent to live with their grandparents, Karen and Gary. All the children did better under their care, but Alyssa still struggled. She began using drugs and had violent thoughts. At 13, she tried to end her life by taking pills. Doctors said her thoughts were very troubling. Even with her problems, Alyssa did okay in school. Her teachers thought she was a good student. At school, she dressed normally, but outside of school, she wore dark makeup and liked to look like a vampire or clown. She called herself Bad Alyssa online and posted strange things on social media. She said she liked killing people and would hurt herself by cutting or burning her skin. She also asked friends if they ever wondered what it would feel like to kill someone. One of Alyssa's half-sisters, Emma, was friends with a 9-year-old girl named Elizabeth Olton. On October 16, 2009, Alyssa dug 2 shallow graves in the woods near her house. 5 days later, on October 21st, Elizabeth came over to play. As she was about to go home, Alyssa called her and asked her to come to the woods. There, Alyssa tried to strangle Elizabeth, then stabbed her multiple times and cut her throat. She buried Elizabeth in one of the graves and covered it with leaves. She went home, cleaned the knife, and later wrote in her journal that killing Elizabeth felt amazing. That same evening, Elizabeth's mother called the police because her daughter didn't come home. Police talked to Emma, who said Alyssa had blood on her pants. While the police searched for Elizabeth, Alyssa went to a church dance. Her journal said she needed to go to church, which is what she did. The police traced Elizabeth's phone to the woods. They found an empty hole and asked Alyssa about it. She said she liked digging holes and used them to bury dead animals. Later, police searched her room and found her journal. Even though she had tried to cover the words, they could still read her confession. At first, Alyssa lied to the police, but eventually she admitted she killed Elizabeth. She showed them where the body was. She was arrested and later charged with murder. In 2012, Alyssa pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and armed criminal action. She was given life in prison plus 30 years. As of April 2025, Alyssa remains incarcerated at the Chillicothe Correctional Center in Missouri. She was denied parole in July 2024, and her next parole hearing is scheduled for 2029. Due to a consecutive 30-year sentence for armed criminal action, even if granted parole, her earliest possible release would be in 2059, when she would be 65 years old. Alyssa had been treated for many mental health problems like depression, anxiety, and borderline personality disorder. Experts said she was very emotionally disturbed. It's believed she killed to feel something, anything, because her depression was so deep. Some people think Alyssa should stay in prison forever. Others believe her abusive past and untreated mental illness should be considered. Martin Pistorius. Martin was born in Johannesburg in 1975. When he was 12, he fell very sick. First, he lost his voice and stopped eating. Then he slept almost all the time and could not walk well. Doctors tried many tests but could not find out what was wrong. They thought it might be meningitis or tuberculosis, but treatments did not help. Within 2 years, Martin could not move or speak at all and spent most days in a care home during daylight hours and at home with his parents at night. His body stayed still, but his mind did not switch off. He heard every word around him and could understand people. He even remembered big news, when Nelson Mandela became president in 1994, when Princess Diana died in 1997, and when the September 11 attacks happened in 2001, events he later spoke about once he could talk again. For years, nurses fed him by spoon. Some treated him roughly, thinking he was not aware. They forced food in his mouth and ignored his pain. He hated reruns of the children's show Barney on the TV in the care home, but he learned to use the sun moving across his bed to tell the time. Around age 16, Martin's mind started to wake up more, but he still could not move or speak. In 2001, a daycare worker named Verna van der Walt gave him a gentle touch, talking to him and giving small head massages. He promised himself he would try to look at her. Slowly, he moved his head. Verna saw this and believed he was aware. She spoke to his parents and asked for special tests. At the University of Pretoria's Augmentative and Alternative Communication Center, therapists showed Martin a simple computer screen with pictures and words. They gave him a switch he could press with his head. When they asked him to pick a picture of a water tap, Martin used all his strength to stop the pointer on the right picture. He proved he was there inside. Martin began to learn again. He used symbols and a speech computer to say what he needed. Over time, he regained a little control of his head and arms. In 2008, Martin met Joanna, often called Jo, through his sister. They married in 2009 in the UK. He studied computer science at the University of Hertfordshire and became a web designer and developer. He co-wrote his true story, the book Ghost Boy, to help others understand locked-in syndrome. Martin has shared his journey in public talks, including a TEDx talk in 2015 titled How My Mind Came Back to Life and No One Knew. In December 2018, his son Sebastian was born. Martin's life shows pain, patience, and hope. For 12 years, he was a ghost boy, trapped and unseen. But thanks to Verna's kindness and the right tests, he found his voice and rebuilt his world, step by step. Silken Falls, 2009. Life is full of risks. We all want to feel proud of ourselves and live meaningful lives. For some people, that means doing things that are very dangerous. But that's what makes everyone's story unique. What's scary to one person might feel peaceful to someone else. It might sound terrifying to hang off a frozen waterfall using just axes and spikes, but some people find it relaxing. Ice climbing is a sport where people climb frozen waterfalls or icy mountains. It's harder than regular rock climbing because the surface is slippery and always changing. Ice climbers wear special boots with spikes called crampons and carry sharp tools called ice axes to help them climb. Climbers face dangers like falling ice, poor wall stability, and even avalanches. Still, there are many people who love the sport. One of the most respected climbers was Guy Laisselle. Guy began ice climbing when he was a student in Ottawa. His first big climb took him over 7 hours to finish. Years later, he would climb the same route in under 5 minutes, without ropes. This kind of climbing is called free soloing, climbing without safety gear. One small mistake, and it could mean death. But Guy was calm and focused. He was able to control his fear, something that very few people can do. He climbed all over the Canadian Rockies and became known for doing hard climbs that no one else would try. He even completed a triple solo on Mount Rundle in Canada, climbing 3 long and very difficult routes, the Sea of Vapors, Exterminator, and the Replicant in one go, all without ropes. Even though Guy was one of the best, he was always kind and humble. He also wrote helpful articles and shared tips in a magazine called Gripped. Many people respected him not just for his skills, but for his friendly and caring nature. Guy won many competitions in places like Colorado and Quebec, and he was honored with awards. But he didn't do it for fame. He did it because he loved the sport and the people in it. In December 2009, Guy went to the Bozeman Ice Festival in Montana, one of the biggest events in ice climbing. He had missed the previous year due to an injury, but was excited to be back. One morning, while climbing with a partner, they finished a climb and began hiking to another wall. At the same time, another group of climbers higher up the slope started to dig into the snow. They didn't realize the snow was unstable. A huge amount of snow broke loose, creating an avalanche. Guy and his partner were below in a narrow valley when they heard it coming. His partner was able to avoid it, but Guy was caught in the powerful wave of snow. He was thrown down the slope and over the icy cliff he had just climbed. Sadly, he did not survive. These are the Silken Falls in Hyalite Canyon where he died. Sherry Songji was a 23-year-old research assistant working in a science lab at UCLA, one of the top universities in the world. She was excited about her future. But in December 2008, something went terribly wrong in the lab, and she was badly burned while working with a dangerous chemical. 18 days later, she died from her injuries. This is where Sherry was working that day, in the lab of Professor Patrick Heron, a well-known chemistry teacher. On the day of the accident, she was handling this chemical bottle called T-butylithium. This chemical is very dangerous. It catches fire as soon as it touches the air. Sherry was using a syringe to move the chemical when the plunger came out and it spilled. Her clothes caught fire immediately. Her sister, Naveen, rushed to the hospital. She later said that almost half of Sherry's body was burned. Her hands were damaged down to the tendons, her stomach was severely burned, and she had deep burns on her neck. Sherry was in critical condition and died after more than 2 weeks of pain. An investigation found that Sherry had not been trained to safely handle such a dangerous chemical. Professor Heron admitted that she didn't receive general lab safety training. He also said he never talked to her about the dangers of T-butylithium and did not provide fire-resistant clothing in the lab. As a result, California's Workplace Safety Agency filed 3 felony charges against Professor Heron. This was the first time in U.S. history that a professor faced criminal charges for an employee's death in a lab. Ellen Wides, head of California's Workplace Safety Agency, said the charges were meant to send a strong message that safety cannot be ignored. She explained that in most states, penalties for workplace deaths are small, but California treats serious cases like this much more seriously. UCLA and the University of California Regents were also named in the case. Jim Kaufman, a lab safety expert, said this case shocked the academic world. He believes it will lead to better safety in labs and hopes that Sherry's death will help prevent future tragedies. Since the accident, UCLA has created a Center for Laboratory Safety. The goal is to improve lab safety at the university and share what they learn with other schools. The university also paid fines for this and other lab safety violations. One of the fines was for not reporting an earlier lab accident that also caused serious burns. The case has also affected other universities in California. Since Sherry's death, there have been at least 7 more lab accidents. But now, safety issues are being taken more seriously. Nino Maeda, a union leader for lab workers at UC San Francisco, said that in the past it could take over a year to fix safety problems. Now people are acting fast because they are afraid of what could happen if they don't. The UC Regents settled the criminal case against the university. They agreed to take responsibility for what happened, improve lab safety, and create a $500,000 scholarship in Sherry Sangji's name. However, Professor Heron chose not to settle. He still faces trial and could go to prison for up to 4.5 years if found guilty. His lawyer says Heron did nothing wrong and that the accident was not a crime. He points out that Sherry had a chemistry degree and lab experience. But Sherry's sister, Naveen, says she won't give up. She wants justice. She says no one should go to work and come home with life-threatening burns, and no one should die just because of unsafe working conditions. Jennifer Kessie, CCTV, January 23, 2006. Jennifer Kessie was a 24-year-old woman living in Orlando, Florida. She had a good job, a new condo, and a happy life. In January 2006, she went missing, and to this day, no one knows what really happened to her. Jennifer had just come back from a short vacation with her boyfriend in the U.S. Virgin Islands. They returned on Sunday, January 22nd. She stayed at her boyfriend's place that night, then left the next morning, Monday, January 23rd, to go to work. That evening, she spoke to her boyfriend on the phone around 10 p.m. They said goodnight, and that was the last time anyone ever heard from her. The next morning, on Tuesday, January 24th, Jennifer didn't show up for work. Her boyfriend tried calling her, but she didn't answer. She had an important meeting that day, so people at her office grew worried when she never arrived. Jennifer was always responsible, and it was not like her to miss work or not call. Her parents drove to her condo from Tampa. When they arrived, they found signs that she had gotten ready for work that morning. There were wet towels, makeup on the counter, and her pajamas on the floor. But she was gone, and so was her car. When they called the police, they were told that Jennifer was an adult and may have left on her own. But her family didn't believe that for a second. Later that day, they began searching for her and handing out flyers. 2 days later, on Thursday, January 26th, someone called the police to say they had seen a car that looked like Jennifer's at their apartment complex, about a mile from her condo. It was her black 2004 Chevy Malibu. There were security cameras at the complex. The footage showed someone parking Jennifer's car and walking away. Sadly, the person's face was blocked by a fence, and no one could tell who it was. The FBI and even NASA tried to enhance the video. All they could say was the person seemed to be between 5'3" and 5'5" tall. Inside the car, everything looked clean. Her things like a DVD player were still there, so robbery didn't seem to be the reason. The only items missing were her phone, iPod, purse, briefcase, and keys. Police believed the car had been wiped down, leaving almost no evidence. A search dog picked up Jennifer's scent and tracked it back to her condo. This made police think she was likely taken from there or nearby. But there were no signs of a struggle, and nothing in her home was out of place. Detectives questioned people in her life. Her boyfriend, family, and ex-boyfriends were all cleared. One co-worker who had once asked her out and was turned down acted strangely after she disappeared. He came to work late that day and made a disturbing joke the next day. Still, there was no solid proof linking him to Jennifer's disappearance. At the time, Jennifer's condo building was under construction. She had told her family that construction workers often made her feel uncomfortable. But after looking into it, the police found nothing suspicious with the workers. Even with help from the FBI and many volunteers, Jennifer's case remains unsolved. Her family continues to search and raise awareness. They believe she may have been kidnapped as she was leaving for work that morning, sometime between 7:30 and 8 a.m. Though there have been many tips and a lot of searching over the years, there have been no clear answers. A reward was offered, and age-progressed photos have been shared, but Jennifer is still missing. The smiling photo of Lori Erica Ruff, 2000s. In 2003, a woman named Lori Erica Kennedy was living in Carrollton, Texas, a town just north of Dallas. She met a man named John Blake Ruff at a Bible study group. Blake came from a rich family, had a college degree, and worked for Verizon. He was known to be shy but honest. Lori said she was from Scottsdale, Arizona, and that both of her parents were dead. She claimed to have no brothers or sisters and said she had a hard childhood. She did not like to talk about her past. Lori and Blake fell in love and got married on January 5, 2004. The wedding was very small, only the pastor was there. Lori took Blake's last name and became Lori Ruff. The couple moved to Leonard, Texas. Lori did not want a wedding announcement in the newspaper, and she avoided talking to neighbors. She worked from home and said she was a marketing consultant. Some said she also worked as a mystery shopper. Lori and Blake tried to have a baby, but she had 4 miscarriages. After getting help with fertility treatments, they had a daughter named Jessica in 2008. Lori seemed nervous around her baby, like she didn't know how to care for children. She was very protective and never left Jessica alone. Blake's family found Lori hard to get along with. She wouldn't talk much during family gatherings and often left to take naps. She was also rude and complained about Blake's family a lot. Things got worse when Lori said she didn't want their daughter seeing Blake's parents. This put a strain on the marriage. They went to counseling, but it didn't help. In 2010, Blake moved out and filed for divorce. After Blake left, neighbors noticed Lori acting strangely. She seemed confused and talked nonstop. She blamed Blake's family for everything and even sent them threatening emails. Once, she broke into their house. Then on Christmas Eve in 2010, Blake's father found her parked outside their house. She had taken her own life with a gun. Lori left 2 notes, one for Blake and one for her daughter, which was not to be opened until Jessica turned 18. After her death, Blake's family went to Lori's house. It was messy, with trash and shredded papers everywhere. In a locked box, they found papers showing that Lori had once used the name Becky Sue Turner. She had changed her name to Lori Erica Kennedy in 1988. An investigation showed that the real Becky Sue Turner was a girl who died in a house fire in 1971. In 1988, Kimberly used Becky's birth certificate to get an ID in Idaho, using her own photo. She later changed her name to Lori Kennedy and started a new life. She got a GED, went to college, and worked different jobs. But there were no records of her before 1988. Years later, a DNA expert linked Lori to a family in Philadelphia. In 2016, her true identity was discovered. She was Kimberly Maria McLean. She had left home at 18 and told her mother never to look for her. Her family never reported her missing. No one knows why Kimberly changed her identity. She didn't steal money or commit other crimes. She just seemed to want to disappear. Some people believe she may have had mental health problems like depression, anxiety, or paranoia. Her past remains a mystery, but at least her real name is now known. The final image of Mitrice Richardson, 2009. Mitrice Richardson was born on April 30th, 1985. She grew up in Covina, California, where she lived with her mother and stepfather. She loved to dance and was a cheerleader in school. After finishing high school in West Covina, she went to California State University, Fullerton, and earned a degree in psychology in 2008. After college, she moved to Los Angeles to live with her grandmother. She wanted to become a teacher. She worked different jobs, including at a shipping company and part-time at a nightclub. She also joined beauty pageants and wanted to become a model. She had a girlfriend named Tessa Moon, but they broke up in 2009. After the breakup, she became very focused on another woman named Vanessa, even though Vanessa already had a girlfriend. She tried to go to Vanessa's birthday party without being invited, and Vanessa asked her to stay away. On September 16, 2009, Mitrice drove to a restaurant in Malibu. She got into a valet's car and talked about things that didn't make sense, like Michael Jackson's death. Inside the restaurant, she joined a group of strangers at their table and acted oddly. She said she was going to Hawaii and would contact them when she got there. When the bill came, it was $89, and she didn't pay. She said the group should have paid for her and later offered to pay with sex. She also said she was from Mars. The restaurant staff thought something was very wrong, and they called the police. Her great-grandmother Mildred offered to pay over the phone, but the restaurant said they needed a signature. When the police arrived, they searched her car and found marijuana and alcohol, but they didn't think she was drunk or high. They arrested her for not paying the bill and for having marijuana. Her phone, purse, and money were left in her car, which was towed. At the police station, she tried calling her great-grandmother Mildred, but couldn't reach her. Her mother called the police to say she was worried because Mitrice was acting strange and didn't know the area well. The police told her not to worry and said she would be released in the morning. But she was actually released at 12:15 a.m. in the middle of the night. A camera at the police station shows her alive for the last time as she walks out of there. She had no phone, no money, and no way to call anyone. She walked away from the station, and hours later, a man saw a woman matching her description in his backyard. She said, "I'm just resting," and then walked off. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. Many people believed she got lost in a nearby area called Dark Canyon. There were even reports of screams in that area, but searches found nothing. Almost a year later, in August 2010, park rangers found her remains in the canyon, 8 miles from where she was released. Her body was found near an old marijuana farm. Her clothes were not on her, but they were nearby. Some people thought she had taken them off before she died, but others questioned this. The police said it was not murder, but many people disagreed. Her family sued the police department, and later there was an investigation. Some people believe Mitrice may have had a mental health condition, like bipolar disorder. Before her disappearance, she had acted strangely, posted odd messages, and told people she wanted to talk to Michelle Obama about working at the White House. Her behavior matched signs of mania and psychosis. The police said they didn't see anything wrong with her mental state when they let her go. But her family and others think she needed help and should not have been released alone in the middle of the night. The last known photo of Zeb Quinn, 2000. Zeb Quinn was an 18-year-old from Asheville, North Carolina. He was a shy, kind, and hardworking young man. He worked part-time at Walmart in the electronics section and was saving money to buy a new car. On the night of January 2, 2000, Zeb planned to look at a used car with a coworker named Jason Owens. They met up at Walmart and were going to drive separately to go see the car. Around 9 p.m., they stopped at a gas station to get drinks. After that, Zeb followed Jason in his car. A few minutes later, Zeb flashed his headlights, signaling Jason to pull over. Zeb told Jason he had gotten a page and needed to call someone back. He drove back to the gas station to use a payphone. About 15 minutes later, he came back looking upset and told Jason he couldn't look at the car anymore. He then quickly drove off, crashing into the back of Jason's truck before speeding away. That was the last time anyone saw Zeb. Zeb's mom, Denise, got worried when he didn't respond to her messages. The next day, she reported him missing. Police had very little to go on. No body, no car, no signs of a crime. Then things got strange. 2 days after Zeb went missing, someone called Walmart pretending to be him, saying he was sick. But the person who answered the phone knew it wasn't Zeb's voice. They traced the call back to the Volvo plant, where Jason Owens worked. Jason said Zeb asked him to make the call, but no one believed that story. Jason also told police about Zeb getting the page and speeding off. He said he went to the hospital later that night for a car accident, but there was no proof of that second crash. Police later learned that Zeb had been talking to a girl named Misty Taylor. Misty had a boyfriend named Wesley. Zeb's family said Wesley was angry when he found out about Zeb and Misty. Just a few days before he went missing, Misty stopped talking to Zeb, and he was scared that Wesley might hurt him. The page Zeb received that night came from his aunt's house, but she said she never sent it and wasn't even home. She claimed her house had been broken into that night, but nothing was stolen. Strangely, she said she was with Misty's mom and Wesley at the time. A few days later, Zeb's car was found near the hospital where his mom worked. The car had some strange things inside. Lips drawn on the back window in lipstick, a jacket that didn't belong to him, a hotel key, and even a live puppy. The seat was pushed up as if a shorter person had driven it. Zeb's mom believed someone placed the car there on purpose for her to find it. Then for many years, nothing happened. The case went cold. In 2015, 15 years later, something terrible happened. A local woman named Christy Schoen Codd, who had been on a cooking show, went missing along with her husband and unborn child. Police later arrested Jason Owens for killing them. He said it was an accident, but then tried to cover it up by burning their remains and hiding the evidence. After this, police searched Jason's property again and found more strange items: fabric, leather, and unknown fragments under a concrete slab. Some people believed these could be connected to Zeb. In 2017, Jason Owens was finally charged with Zeb Quinn's murder. He is already in prison for killing the Codds and will likely spend the rest of his life behind bars. Wesley Smith, the boyfriend of Misty Taylor, was implicated in allegations made by Robert Jason Owens. Owens claimed that Smith hired his uncle, Walter Gene Owens, to murder Quinn due to a love triangle involving Misty Taylor. According to Owens, Gene Owens killed Quinn, and Robert Owens assisted in covering up the crime. However, both Misty Taylor and Wesley Smith have denied any involvement, and no direct evidence has been presented linking them to the crime. As a result, neither has been charged in connection with Quinn's disappearance. Melora Rivera's rooftop escape, 2004. A frightening break-in in Venice ended with a daring escape as a woman climbed out of her second-story bedroom window to avoid a confrontation with an intruder. Around 9 a.m., Rivera was in bed when she heard someone forcefully enter her home. Wearing only a flannel shirt, she quickly grabbed her phone and escaped through the window. climbing onto the roof as the intruder pursued her. Authorities identified the suspect as 29-year-old Christian Hicks, a homeless man who allegedly broke down Rivera's door. He followed her onto the roof, prompting a swift police response. Officers arrived within 2 minutes of the 911 call, and with assistance from the fire department, safely helped Rivera down before Hicks was taken into custody. Rivera's landlord, Josh Romano, witnessed the situation unfold and directed police to Hicks' location on the roof. Romano noted that earlier that morning, Hicks had been detained by officers for trespassing in someone's yard, but was released due to lack of identification. This could have been avoided, Romano said. Rivera, although unharmed, is shaken and concerned. We need to address the homelessness crisis, she said. We can't keep ignoring people who need help. It's a danger to them and to us. Nikki Katsouris car crash, 2006. Nikki Katsouris was an 18-year-old girl from California who died in a terrible car crash on October 31, 2006. She was driving her father's Porsche 911 without permission when she lost control of the car and crashed into a toll booth at very high speed. The accident was so severe that she died instantly. On the day of the accident, Nikki had lunch with her parents at home. After lunch, her father left for work and her mother stayed home. About 10 minutes later, Nikki took her father's Porsche without asking. When her mother saw her leave, she called her husband, who quickly started looking for Nikki. While he was on the phone with 911, he was told that a serious accident had just happened nearby. It turned out to be Nikki. Nikki was driving on the 241 toll road in Lake Forest, California. She was going over 100 miles per hour when she tried to pass another car. She lost control and crashed into a concrete toll booth. Sadly, she died on the spot. Tests later showed she had some cocaine in her system, but no alcohol. As part of the police investigation, officers from the California Highway Patrol took photos of the crash scene. These photos showed the damage to Nikki's car and her body. In the pictures, you could see that Nikki's head was split in the middle. The pictures were meant to be private, but two CHP workers, Aaron Reich and Thomas O'Donnell, shared them with others, even though that was against the rules. The photos soon appeared on the internet. Some people even sent them directly to Nikki's family through email with cruel messages. These events deeply hurt the Katsouris family. They stopped using the internet and even pulled their youngest daughter out of school to protect her from being bullied. Nikki's parents decided to sue the CHP and the two employees who leaked the photos. At first, a judge said the case could move forward. The CHP apologized and promised to prevent such things from happening again. O'Donnell was punished with 25 days of unpaid leave, and Reich left his job for other reasons. Later, however, the case was dismissed because the judge said the CHP workers didn't have a legal duty to protect the family's privacy. Still, the court said their behavior was awful. The CHP tried to get the photos removed from the internet, but many copies remained online. The family also hired a company to help remove the photos, but they couldn't get rid of all of them. In 2010, an appeals court changed the earlier decision. It said the family did have the right to sue for emotional distress. The judges said the CHP's actions had caused serious harm and that the officers should not have shared the photos. In 2011, the court ruled that Aaron Reich couldn't claim free speech as a defense because he had no clear reason for sending the photos. Finally, in January 2012, the CHP agreed to pay the Katsouris family $2.37 million. A CHP spokesperson said that no amount of money could make up for the pain the family went through, but they hoped the settlement would bring the family some peace. Dennis Rader at daughter's graduation, 2005. Most crimes become harder to solve the longer they stay unsolved, and serial killer cases are no different. Once a killer stops, there are fewer chances to catch them and less fresh evidence to work with. But sometimes there are rare cases where justice still catches up. One of those is the story of Dennis Rader, also known as the BTK killer. Dennis Rader was born in 1945 in Wichita, Kansas. He had a fairly normal childhood, but he often felt ignored by his parents, especially his mother. This may have helped cause the dark feelings he developed. From a young age, Dennis had disturbing thoughts about hurting women. He would cut pictures from magazines and draw ropes on them. He even dressed in stolen women's clothes and spied on his neighbors. After high school, Dennis joined the Air Force. He later got married, went back to school, and worked for a home security company. At the same time, he started a secret life as a killer. On January 15, 1974, he murdered the Otero family in their home. He tied them up and strangled them. One of the children, 15-year-old Charlie, came home later and found their bodies. It shocked the police and community. A few months later, Dennis attacked again. This time, he targeted Catherine and Kevin Bright. He broke into their house, tied them up, and shot Kevin after he tried to fight back. Kevin survived and got help, but sadly, Catherine died from her wounds. At first, police didn't connect the two crimes. Later that year, Dennis sent a message to a local newspaper claiming he was the killer. He included details only the real killer would know. The letter had many spelling mistakes, and his own wife even joked that it looked like something he would write. In 1977, Dennis killed 2 more people and sent another letter. In it, he gave himself the nickname BTK, which stood for Bind Them, Torture Them, Kill Them. He also started using strange words like Factor X to explain why he killed. He later broke into a woman's home but left before she arrived. He stole a scarf and mailed it back to her with a scary message: "Be glad you weren't here because I was." The police formed a task force but didn't find much. Meanwhile, Dennis lived a normal life, going to church and helping with the Boy Scouts. In 1985, he killed his neighbor, Maureen Hedge, and even brought her body to his church to take photos. He continued to kill until 1991, with his last victim being Dolores Davis. After that, BTK seemed to disappear for 14 years. But in 2004, Dennis came back. He sent a letter to a newspaper, admitting he had killed Vicki Wegerly in 1986. He included her ID and photos to prove it. He also began sending more letters, giving police a chance to finally catch him. In one letter, Dennis asked if a floppy disk could be traced. Police told him it couldn't. He believed them and sent one. The disk still had hidden data, showing it was made at his church by someone named Dennis. Police used this clue to get DNA from his daughter's medical records, and it matched DNA found at a crime scene. Dennis Rader was arrested in 2005. He admitted to killing 10 people and was given 10 life sentences. He is still in prison today. The last dive of Yuri Lipsky, 2000. On April 28, 2000, a young Russian diving instructor named Yuri Lipsky took a dive that would cost him his life. He was only 22 years old and visiting Dahab, Egypt, for just 2 days. While there, he decided to dive into a place called the Blue Hole, one of the most dangerous diving spots in the world. The Blue Hole is a large underwater sinkhole, very deep and close to the shore. It reaches over 130 meters deep, and beyond that, it drops off into a steep underwater cliff that goes down more than 1,000 meters. Because of its depth and the number of accidents, it's known as the Diver's Cemetery. Yuri wanted to dive all the way to the bottom of the Blue Hole. He asked other experienced divers to join him, but they all said no. They warned him it was too dangerous and needed special training and equipment. But Yuri was determined. Even without the right gear and preparation, he chose to go alone. At around 5 p.m., Yuri entered the water. He had a video camera attached to his head so he could film the dive from his own view. At first, things seemed to go well, but as he went deeper, the danger grew. Most recreational divers are told not to go deeper than 40 meters. Yuri went much farther. He was not wearing extra tanks of air or using a special gas mix needed for deep diving. This was risky. As he sank, he began to breathe in more nitrogen, which can cause something called nitrogen narcosis. This condition affects the brain, making people feel drunk and confused. It also makes it hard for them to think clearly or make good decisions. Yuri began sinking faster and lost control. He tried to stop, but he was too heavy. His safety vest, which helps divers float, could not lift him anymore. He tried to inflate it again, but it burst. Air rushed out, and he kept falling. Eventually, he landed face down at the bottom of the Blue Hole, 91 meters deep. His camera stopped recording at 5:11 p.m. He had gone from walking on the beach to lying dead on the ocean floor in just over 7 minutes. A week later, a local diver named Tarek Omar was called in to find out what had happened. Tarek had a lot of experience with rescue and recovery dives. He found Yuri's body lying still at the bottom. Yuri had likely died long before anyone knew he was missing. Tarek also found Yuri's camera. He didn't expect it to work because it wasn't made for such depths. But when he checked it later, he found that the recording had survived. The video showed Yuri's final moments, confirming what Tarek suspected. Yuri had been carrying too much weight, his vest failed, and he suffered from nitrogen narcosis. What made the tragedy worse was that Yuri's mother was in Dahab at the time. She had been trying to contact her son and was the one who reached out to Tarek. When Yuri's belongings were returned to her, the video camera was included. Tarek later said he wished he had destroyed the footage, so his mother would not have to see such a painful thing. Tarek had even met Yuri before the dive and warned him not to go. But Yuri didn't listen. Today, the Blue Hole still attracts divers from around the world, but many are more careful because of what happened to Yuri. The Columbia crew's final photo, 2003. The destruction of the Space Shuttle Columbia in 2003 was a tragedy that shocked the world. 7 astronauts lost their lives, and many people have wondered what their final moments were like. The Columbia mission had gone well at first. Unlike the Challenger disaster in 1986, which exploded shortly after takeoff, Columbia's crew made it safely into space. The crew included Rick D. Husband, William McCool, Kalpana Chawla, David M. Brown, Laurel B. Clark, Michael P. Anderson, and Elon Ramon. Their mission focused on doing science experiments in space, and things seemed to be going as planned. Sadly, the trouble began during liftoff, but no one realized how serious it was. A piece of foam from the shuttle broke off and hit the left wing. NASA saw the damage but believed it wasn't a big risk. They told the astronauts not to worry. But during re-entry, when the shuttle was coming back to Earth, the damaged wing broke off. This caused the entire shuttle to come apart in the sky, just 16 minutes before they were supposed to land. 5 years later, NASA released a long report explaining what went wrong. It also gave 30 safety suggestions to help avoid future accidents. Only a few years after that, NASA stopped using space shuttles. During the final moments, only one astronaut was heard speaking to NASA. Commander Rick Husband answered a message from Mission Control asking about strange heat readings. His last word was Roger before the radio went silent. We also have a short video from the shuttle taken right before re-entry. In it, the crew is calmly doing routine checks, looking at clipboards, checking equipment, and talking to each other. 4 crew members, Husband, McCool, Chawla, and Clark, can be seen. This video ends about 13 minutes before disaster struck. At about 500,000 feet over the Pacific Ocean, the astronauts were preparing to return home. Then, about 23 minutes before the planned landing, NASA noticed more heat problems and lost tire pressure. They reached out again to the crew. Rick Husband replied kindly and calmly, but soon after all contact was lost. That was the last anyone ever heard from the crew. Although we don't know their exact last words, we do have some beautiful messages they wrote while in space. These give us a glimpse into how they felt during their time among the stars. Laurel Clark wrote an email to her family where she talked about daily life in space, like eating and how her eyes were getting blurry. She wrote, "I have seen some amazing things, lightning over the Pacific, the glow of Australia below, the moon setting over Earth, the large plains of Africa, and rivers cutting through mountains." West Mesa murders, 2001 to 2005. In February 2009, a woman was walking her dog in West Mesa, a dry and open area in Albuquerque, New Mexico. While walking, she found something shocking, a human bone in the dirt. She called the police, and when they came to investigate, they made a terrifying discovery. They found the remains of 11 women buried across the area. All the victims were female, and most had been missing for years. The person responsible became known as the West Mesa Bone Collector, a name as chilling as the crime itself. To this day, no one knows for sure who the killer is. Police later learned that these women had likely been killed between 2001 and 2005. Most of the women were Hispanic and between the ages of 15 and 32. Many were believed to have been involved in drugs and sex work, making them more vulnerable and less likely to be searched for right away. The victims weren't buried in one large grave, but were instead scattered across the dry desert land. Police formed a special team to solve the case. They worked with the FBI and other agencies, but there was very little evidence. No one saw what happened, and there were no clear clues at the scene. The only connection between the women was how and where they were found. The official cause of death for all the victims was listed as homicidal violence, but experts couldn't figure out exactly how any of them died. Several men have been looked at as possible suspects. One man, Lorenzo Montoya, lived near the burial site. In 1999, he was arrested for trying to strangle a sex worker. In 2006, he killed another woman, but her boyfriend came to help and shot Montoya in self-defense. After Montoya died, the killings seemed to stop, which made police think he might have been the killer. Still, nothing has ever been proven. Another suspect is Joseph Blea, who was known to stalk sex workers. His ex-wife told police that she believed he was the killer. She said she found strange jewelry in their home and women's underwear in their backyard. Police also found rope and tape in his car. Blea is now in prison for raping a 13-year-old girl in the 1980s. He has not been charged for the West Mesa murders, but he is still considered a possible suspect. A third man, Scott Kimball, also came up as a suspect. He had been released from prison to work for the FBI as an informant, but later went on a killing spree. He is now serving a 70-year sentence. Kimball often visited Albuquerque between 2002 and 2005, the same time the women were being killed. But again, no solid proof connects him to the case. In 2010, a private investigator got strange emails and phone calls from someone claiming to know who the killer was. Some people think the killer himself may have sent them, but police could not confirm this. Before the bodies were even found, one missing persons detective had already created a list of 16 missing sex workers in Albuquerque from 2001 to 2007. 9 of those women were later identified among the bodies in West Mesa. The others are still missing, leading some to believe there could be another burial site somewhere. Years have passed, but police still haven't found out who the West Mesa bone collector really is. The case is now cold, but some believe the killer may still be out there, possibly even killing again. Others think the killer may have died. Either way, the mystery remains unsolved. Murder of Meredith Emerson, 2008. Meredith Emerson was a bright, strong, and kind young woman. She was 24 years old, had just graduated from the University of Georgia, and was trained in martial arts. She had a black lab puppy named Ella that she loved very much. One day during the holidays, she decided to go hiking in the North Georgia mountains with Ella. She never came back. At first, people thought maybe she got lost or hurt on the trail. But soon, it became clear something worse had happened. A former police officer found things on the trail like a police baton, dog treats, and leashes. The ground also looked like it had been disturbed. That's when local authorities called in more help. News reporters and police from many departments came to search. A tip line was set up, and people started calling right away. The media played a big role in sharing information. Soon, someone called in the name Gary Hilton. He was Meredith's kidnapper. One of Hilton's old bosses told police about a strange call he received from him, but he waited almost 3 hours before sharing that with police. By the time they got to the place Hilton called from, it was too late. Hilton and Meredith were gone again. Investigators later learned she was still alive at that point. That delay was heartbreaking for everyone involved. Eventually, someone spotted Hilton at a gas station, acting strangely and throwing things away. Police came quickly and arrested him. They had found him, but they still didn't know where Meredith was. The team decided to get Hilton a lawyer right away, hoping he would tell them. Hilton finally told police where they could find Meredith's body. She was found in the woods, about 40 yards off the trail, covered with leaves. Her head was missing. A friend had to tell Meredith's family the terrible news. People who worked on the case were very emotional. Meredith was a fighter. Even Hilton said she almost got away. She was small but strong and did everything she could to escape. She even thought about her dog, Ella, when she was in danger. Hilton said Meredith asked about Ella after she was kidnapped, so he went back and got the dog. Hilton had a troubled past. He had served in the army and was intelligent, but he spent much of his life wandering around in a van. Something led him down a dark path. He didn't seem sorry at all. He spoke about Meredith as if they were spending time together by choice. He even talked about how he made sure she was warm by giving her a good sleeping bag. But the truth was much more cruel. Hilton tricked Meredith into thinking she might be released, but that was a lie. He led her on, then killed her. He acted calm and proud about it afterward, showing no emotion. In the end, investigators in Georgia made a deal with Hilton. In exchange for telling them where Meredith was, he avoided the death penalty there. But the evidence from Meredith's case helped convict him in other states. He is now on death row in Florida. Many people are surprised he's still alive because of his poor health, but he's still in prison. Shannon Matthews, CCTV, 2008. Shannon Matthews was born on September 9, 1998, and lived in Dewsbury, West Yorkshire, England. Her mother was Karen Matthews, and her father was Leon Rose. In early 2008, Shannon was 9 years old and lived with her mother and her mother's boyfriend, Craig Meehan, who was 22 years old at the time. Karen had 7 children with at least 5 different men. 4 of those children, including Shannon, lived with her. Karen did not work and relied on government welfare. Social workers had visited the family many times because people were worried about how Karen was raising her children. Craig's uncle, Michael Donovan, also known as Paul Drake, was 39 years old and would later become a key part of this story. On February 19, 2008, Shannon was last seen at her school around 3:10 p.m. when she didn't come home. Her mother called the police at 6:48 p.m. A huge search began, involving more than 300 police officers. It was one of the biggest searches in that area since the case of the Yorkshire Ripper. Despite all the efforts, Shannon was not found. The case received some media attention, but not as much as the disappearance of another young girl, Madeleine McCann, the year before. Some people believed the reason was that Shannon's family was poor, while Madeleine's parents were doctors. A newspaper offered a reward of £20,000 for information. Later, they increased it to £50,000. On March 14, 2008, police found Shannon alive in the home of Michael Donovan, Craig's uncle. She had been hidden under a bed in a small space that had been specially made to keep her out of sight. Michael was found hiding in the same space. He even bit a police officer when they pulled him out. Police found sleep medicine and a list of rules for Shannon in the house. There was also a strap in the attic, but it did not appear to have been used. It turned out that Karen Matthews, Shannon's own mother, had helped plan the kidnapping with Michael Donovan. Their plan was to keep Shannon hidden, wait for reward money to increase, then pretend to find her and claim the money. They planned to split it between them. Michael was arrested 3 days after Shannon was found. He was charged with kidnapping and other crimes. Karen was arrested a few weeks later and faced similar charges. Craig Meehan was also arrested, but for having illegal images on his computer, not for anything to do with Shannon's kidnapping. In late 2008, both Karen and Michael were found guilty. In January 2009, they were sentenced to 8 years in prison. Both were released by 2012. After the rescue, Shannon needed counseling because she had nightmares and mental health problems. She was placed in foster care and given a new identity for her safety. Karen and Michael were not smart criminals. They simply wanted money. Many believed Karen was abusing the welfare system by having many children and not working. However, studies show that most people on welfare are not cheating the system. In fact, tax fraud by wealthy people costs the country much more money than welfare fraud. The Dnipropetrovsk Maniacs, 2007. In the summer of 2007, a town in Ukraine called Dnipro was living in fear. Over just 21 days, 21 innocent people were brutally murdered by 3 teenage boys, Igor, Viktor, and Alexander. What made this case even more disturbing was that the killers recorded some of their crimes on video. One of the videos, known as 3 Guys, 1 Hammer, was later leaked online and became one of the most horrifying clips ever seen. At the time, the city was enjoying a normal summer, but things quickly changed as random people started being killed: men, women, children, even people just walking down the street or sitting on park benches. There was no clear pattern, and the police struggled to find the killers. People were terrified. The first victim was a 33-year-old woman. She was walking in the middle of the day when Igor and Viktor attacked her from behind with a hammer. Shockingly, her own mother later found her body and couldn't even recognize her face. Just 2 hours later, they killed again, this time a man sleeping on a bench. Over the next few weeks, more people were murdered, including a soldier, a young mother, and a 14-year-old boy who was fishing. His friend Vadim survived and later helped police by giving a description of the attackers. Sadly, before the killers were caught, at least a dozen more people lost their lives. As it turns out, these boys had shown signs of violence even as teenagers. Igor and Viktor would torture animals for fun, taking pictures with the dead bodies. They even drew disturbing symbols with the animals' blood. All 3 had been friends since childhood. They said they were trying to overcome their fears by doing dangerous and cruel things. For example, they would hang over the edge of a high balcony for hours or watch animals die to get used to blood. The police finally caught them after a big mistake. Igor tried to sell a stolen phone belonging to one of the victims at a pawn shop. When the phone was turned on to test it, the police were able to track the signal and arrest them in the store. Alexander was arrested at home later. He had tried to flush other stolen phones down the toilet. When police checked their phones and computers, they found hundreds of photos and videos of the murders. In one video, they are seen laughing after a killing, cleaning their hammer with a bottle of water. They even visited some of their victims' funerals just to make fun of them. In total, the boys were connected to 29 different crimes, 21 murders, and 8 attacks. Igor and Viktor were sentenced to life in prison. Alexander, who filmed many of the crimes but was not proven to have killed anyone, got 9 years in prison for robbery.